Welcome back to the Upstate Coffee Collective podcast. Happy Monday. Matt Pfeiffer here, just checking in to see how you're doing. We've got a really exceptionally exciting episode for you today. We got the opportunity to talk to somebody that we really look up to in the coffee world, Alexander Mills. If you live under a rock and you don't know about Alexander Mills, but you love coffee, I think you'll fall in love with him here during this conversation. And once you go check him out online, because I certainly did. Alexander Mills is a craft coffee educator and enthusiast from Niagara in Southern Ontario, Canada. He is most well known in the coffee world for his blog at alexandermills.coffee and for his gorgeous Instagram feed and his desire to make brewing great coffee at home more approachable. I think that has been a real strong point to be made, especially in this year when a lot of people are doing a lot more stuff at home. We talk about his unique and uplifting backstory, good music, being a new dad, and of course, all things coffee. One of my selfish reasons for getting him on the pod was actually to pick his brain about his turntable setup and his unique approach to language when it comes to talking about sensory experiences in coffee. Alexander is somebody who Kevin and I have looked up to since we started in coffee. Alexander's influence in coffee reaches far and wide. He is a lot of other things, though. He's not just a coffee guy, you know? He's a human being, and he's got a really interesting backstory. He is a pastor in his hometown with his wife, Rebecca. He's a new dad. He and his wife, Rebecca, fostered children before they had a kid of their own just recently. He's also a musician. He's really into music and music listening. But my gosh, we had such a great time talking to him, and he was absolutely so gracious, and I think you're going to love the conversation we had. So, only note for today is that we've got a couple of bags left of our highlight roast, Guava Banana. It's a double fermented Caturra coffee from Colombia. We collaborated with Stacks Espresso Bar to get this coffee off the ground, and it is beautiful, and it's boozy, and it's fruity, and it's everything that I want out of my spring morning. So if you want a bag, head to upstatecoffeecollective.com/shop. Also, listeners of this podcast can save 10% on a bag of our flagship blend called All Day ADK. You can use the code podcast at checkout and save 10%. We really appreciate you. We love you. Have a great week and enjoy this conversation with Alexander Mills. I've seen you ran your grinder around Rebecca's baby belly to get the baby acclimated.
And I think it worked because I don't know if you saw my post the other day, but I was brewing coffee while Asher was like asleep on my chest.
Oh my God, yeah.
Whoa. And somebody sent me a message there like, did you grind the coffee with him there? You couldn't have. And I was like, yeah, I did. And he slept through it. And I'm just going to attribute it to the fact that I parked her pregnant belly next to the grinder a bunch of times while I ground coffee to try and acclimatize him to it. So
I love that.
Yeah. You're just like, this is a sound of the world. Get used to it.
Yeah,
that's I said almost those words verbatim. I'm like, kid, this is, you don't have an option. Like, this is what this house sounds like, and get used to it.
Yep,
I love it.
That's awesome, man. Well, let's jump into it. Welcome back to the Upstate Coffee Collective podcast. Matthew Pfeiffer, the host of this thing. I'm the co-host, Kevin Miner. And today, just to ask the inaugural question that we ask of people, Alexander, who are you? How are you? And what do you do?
That is a loaded set of questions.
Yep.
My name is Alexander, alexander.mills on Instagram. For those of you who are part of the coffee world on Instagram, how am I? I'm great. We were just chatting just before we hit record that I've got a newborn, and he just makes everything great. Like, just looking at his perfect little face, it's like, how can you not be great? Even in the middle of the morning when, you know, we should all be sleeping, but we're not. And it's like, I can't be mad at that nose. Like, it's just too cute.
Well, it's your nose, isn't it? Or
you know what? It's funny because, like, when other people have kids, you're always looking at the other people. And so when they have kids, you can see like, oh, I see his nose, I see her ears, whatever. But when he showed up, it was like, because he's part of me, I had a really hard time like picking out who he looks like.
Oh, wow.
And of course, like my family says he looks like me. Rebecca's family says he looks like her. So I guess he looks like a bit of both of us. What is that? 2 of the 3 questions. Who am I? How am I? And what do I do? That's the most loaded question. So I do a bunch of stuff. And I'll list them in a bit of an intentional order. So my wife and I actually pastor a church here in Niagara-on-the-Lake with my parents, which is the most little known fact about me.
Whoa, that's amazing. I did not know that.
Yeah, I don't really project that part of my life on the internet because I just don't have the bandwidth to do it. So people who know me in real life and here in Niagara know me as that. But on the internet, I don't really project that. And that's pretty intentional. I work a day job at a company called Pro Church Tools, and we do software. I know you guys are familiar with software and coding a bit. We have a couple software products. So one of them is a church website builder. One of them is like an online giving platform. Another one is stock footage for churches to use for video content. And that's actually, those 3 things they pay the bills, but that's the least of what we do. Most of what we do is free content. So we just make training videos to teach churches how to use the internet, basically.
Wow. The
That's
next
awesome.
right? The next generation of church, right? The next generation of being in that world and trying to like connect with especially younger people. I think that's really difficult for the church in general. Would you agree?
Oh, I would totally agree. And it's what we say a lot is we're going through the biggest communication shift in the last 500 years. And that's a reference to the printing press. And when the printing press showed up, the first thing ever printed on that thing that revolutionized the way we communicate was the Bible. And then since then, for the last 500 years, it remains the most widely printed and distributed book of all time. And then the internet shows up, which revolutionizes communication in a whole new way. Like you and I are only talking because of the internet, and we're recording video and recording audio. It's only possible because of the internet. And the church is like scared of the thing. And we've fallen behind and don't use a lot of the common tools like Google My Business, you know? So when people are looking for a restaurant, they know how to find it on Google, but when people are looking for a church, the churches aren't showing up. So that's basically what we do is just we help them navigate that communication shift.
Oh, wow.
So those are the 2 things I'm lesser known for. But the thing that we're probably going to talk most about is who I am in the craft coffee space.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess I'm best known as a blogger, and I have a real blog, unlike some folks who call themselves bloggers who don't have an actual blog.
There are words on a screen somewhere. Is that what you're getting at?
So I started writing about coffee, and I'm sure we'll talk about my history with coffee. I started drinking coffee ages ago, but I started writing about coffee 5 or 6 years ago, mostly as I was learning myself, but just as I was getting asked a lot of questions, and I thought, well, I can make a resource so I can send you the answer instead of articulating it every time. And then Instagram, you know, I'm a photographer by trade. I used to do wedding photography full time. And so the marriage of like imagery and mini blogging, I guess, on Instagram was just the perfect fit for me. So I've been posting about coffee on Instagram for years, and now transitioning into a bunch of other really fun projects in coffee, and now serving some coffee. So we can dig into all that stuff later. But from a 10,000 foot view, that's who I am and some of what I do.
Yeah,
that was excellent. Thank you. I one of the things that struck me when I was thinking about having you on the podcast was like, wow, when Kevin and I came onto the coffee scene, probably 2-ish years ago, 2.5, almost 3 now, years ago.
3 for me.
3 for you, and you.
But you and I, as a pair,
right?
2 years ago.
Kevin brought me into the coffee scene. I work a day job as a software engineer, and was looking for a hobby, just something to do, and we got talking, and here we are, right? So. One of the things that I always found really interesting was when I jumped into the coffee scene, you were like already there. You were already making content on Instagram,
on internet, yeah.
on that thing, on the web. You know, I dialed into my server at the library. No, so you were like already making like really great content on the internet, all over Instagram, thousands of followers. From my point of view, like I was like, oh, he must work in coffee, but it seems like, and from what you just explained, you don't exactly traditionally work in coffee. Do you have a back history though, being a barista, or is it a hobby that you fell in love with much like we did?
Yeah, that's a great question. So back then, 3-4 years ago, I wasn't working in coffee. I don't think I'd done anything paid in coffee at that time. I was working in the way that I guess internet influencers, for lack of a better term, work, which is in like the education department, which is often a free world anyways. And like, I mean, back to my work at Pro Church Tools, all of our education is free. And that's just the nature of, again, the internet. Like YouTube is the best university. You can learn how to do anything on there and it's free. So that's kind of what I was doing back then. My history in coffee is just a really enthused home brewer. And now transitioning into working in coffee in a few different ways, both personally and with some other folks. And now working behind bars in different fashions. Maybe just because I have more freedom with my time and more opportunities now. I live in this weird space in Niagara Falls. So Niagara Falls is obviously known as what it is, a tourist town. And but to actually live here is very strange. I think a lot about, like, I've been to Vegas, and I think it's probably similar to folks who live in Vegas. Like, we all have an idea of what Vegas is, right? And it's the Strip, and it's the gambling, and it's all that stuff. But like, I have friends who like live in Vegas, like that's where they live. And I feel the same way about living in the Falls. It's a really strange city. There's about, 90,000 people who live in the Falls. And then the neighboring city is about 140, 150,000. And there's just no specialty coffee culture at all. For me to go to a shop that I would like to sit down and enjoy, I'm driving to Hamilton, which is halfway between here and Toronto. It's 500,000 people, and that's 45 minutes from here.
Wow.
So as far as opportunity goes to work in coffee, here where I am locally, there wasn't any until I created it, which we can talk about later. But I started my first work in coffee was online because, first of all, that's where I was accessible. And second of all, there wasn't a local scene.
And so you responded to that by starting to blog and answer some of those questions that you were obviously getting as maybe like just the local coffee guru of your friends, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's cool. But you said that you've been drinking coffee for ages.
Yeah.
Which, are we talking like low teens or?
Well, I grew up drinking coffee. I just came by it, honestly. My dad and my brother both took their coffee black. My brother's 10 years older than I am. So I did the same thing, right? Just to fit in with dad and older brother. And some of us come by that, honestly. That's our experience. And here in Canada, it was Tim Hortons. Growing up, and then you go through like this phase of drinking Starbucks, thinking that you are at the pinnacle of the coffee experience because of what you're paying and what the space feels like compared to Tim Hortons. But my first, experience with specialty coffee or craft coffee was about, let me do the math, 11 years ago. To make this long story very short, I did a coffee swap with a friend of mine. I had coffee from Cuba. I had just come home from Cuba, and he had coffee from home, from a roaster on the west coast of Canada called Bows and Arrows. And we traded coffees, and it was a natural Ethiopian that he traded with me. And it tasted like blueberries. And I thought, what in the world is this? And that was 11 years ago. And so since then, I'm the kind of person that like, whether it's coffee or cameras or wine or whiskey, it's like, once I get a taste of a different world, I'm going to dive in head first all the way. So that's what I did with coffee. So it's been about 11 years that I've been taking specialty coffee really seriously and honing my skills as a home brewer, which is how most people relate to me as far as like what I can give them and how I can help them.
Yep.
But yeah, of course, recently as on bar as well, behind machines and stuff. So yeah.
So learning that you are a pastor in your hometown really piqued my interest because I want to say we've talked to, at minimum, 3 guys heavily invested in coffee that are also pastors.
Oh yeah.
And it's really, really interesting to find that. I don't think that that's like an anomaly. Is there something, would you say, about the coffee industry or the community or is there something about coffee that brings people of faith into it, or people who enjoy, creating a community or inclusiveness? Like, what comes to your mind when I bring that up?
Yeah, you're probably referencing folks like Kenny from Ethnos, or even Mark Cunningham. I know you had him on the pod. He's a great guy.
Heck yeah, he's the best.
But I think you just touched on it there, Matt. You said the word community, and I think that is probably what it's all about. The church, and we don't need to talk much about faith if you don't want to, but the church has, in its best expression, and there are a lot of poor expressions of the church that do a lot of harm, which is a lot of the work that I do as a pastor, is kind of undoing that for folks. But in its best expression is a very holistic community that takes care of each other.
Yes.
And I think we all know that about coffee, and I don't think it's unique to specialty coffee either. I think any expression of coffee, we know intrinsically, has everything to do about community. It's such a communal beverage. It's one of the most consumed beverages in the world. It's on every table in every cafe, and it's so nostalgic for folks because you've had some of the most heartbreaking conversations over a cup of coffee, or some of the most joyful conversations over a cup of coffee. You sit around a table, sometimes with people you like, sometimes with people you don't like, people you agree with, people you don't agree with. And I could be using the same language to describe what our faith community looks like here in Niagara, right? It's like, it's the same thing. You gather around a table and you chat and you learn about each other and learn about life together. So I think, fundamentally, I think that's what it's all about, is community. And then, of course, you've got churches that, like massive churches in the States, that just shove cafes into their lobbies too. So there's that.
I was going to make a comment about that.
Yeah.
That's definitely a thing. There is a church in our region that actually does Starbucks service. Yes.
I did not know that.
Oh, dude, it's nuts. Like, you walk in and you're like, huh.
Okay. Or they'll take it another step, and they'll start their own cafe and call it like Holy Grounds or something.
Oh yeah.
So,
all right, you got me. There's always one dad joke every podcast. That was it.
I'm working on them because I'm a new dad, so I'm trying to exercise the dad jokes and figure out what style of dad joke I really want to lean into. So
let's
that's
talk
a muscle. You gotta develop it.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because you and I, Alexander, had a short conversation about being a dad. So you are a new dad. So by the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's really amazing. Obviously, you have fostered in the past, so you're no stranger to being a parent. But I think that I must imagine there's something special about going through the entire process with Rebecca, your wife, and seeing that unfold, and seeing somebody that is wholly your blood. Yeah. One of the things that I kind of wanted to touch on there is what tools or methods have you discovered are really helpful for you to manage your time, to do all these things that you want to do, and be there with your family, being a dad? How do you balance all of that responsibility?
Yeah. What does time management look like for you?
Oh, that's such a great question. It's a weird question to answer in this time period we're living through during a global pandemic, because time management, work and not work, has all just kind of been distorted. I've been working from this room, from my home office, for the last year. And a lot of the things that we used to do, we haven't met in church for over a year. We've just been streaming online to Facebook on Sundays, not from church. We don't do a high production. We're a small little church, so I just do it from home. I share the gospel from home. So it's a lot of the things that I used to do, and a lot of the things that used to take up my time, haven't in the last year. So now, having a kid and starting some new projects, I have a hard time knowing where or how they would have fit in a year ago.
True. Yeah.
But here we are today, and we talk a lot about when things go back to normal, and I'm sure some things will go back to normal, whatever that means, but I don't think we're going back to our lives the way we used to know them. Now, that being said, whether it was pre-pandemic or during pandemic right now, the way I manage my time is by being very intentional to what I say yes to, And I say yes to a lot. I don't say yes to as much as I used to. I'm exercising that muscle, learning how to say no.
Yeah.
But I've found being intentional with what I say yes to and making sure that the things that I say yes to give to me as much as they take from me result for me. And I'm not sure if this can work for everyone. But for me, at least, and for us, they have resulted in what I like to call a full life instead of a busy one.
I love
and
that.
I think from the outside they can be perceived as the same thing, like, oh, Alexander, you're so busy. And it's like, well, to you, yeah. And my time is occupied a lot, but it's the things I've said yes to are so life-giving that it feels full. It doesn't feel busy. So that's kind of a philosophical answer, rather than telling you how I block out my time. I get very creative. I do a little bit of work here, a little bit of work here on this project there, on this project there. I mean, having Asher be up in the middle of the night sometimes is helpful because I can jot down a couple notes on my phone or do this or do that. But also being super intentional about not working all the time. You know, having my phone actually, this would surprise most people. My phone has been on Do Not Disturb for 6 years.
Whoa.
It stays on Do Not Disturb.
What?
And I respond to things at my convenience, and that really helps with our dynamic at home. Rebecca knowing and Asher knowing when he grows up that I have my dad's attention when I need it. So,
dude, actually, I did this unintentionally one time. I was getting blown up. I'm in a lot of group chats, mostly with Kevin, and then like a third or fourth party. So I see a lot of Kevin talking in my world, which I love.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So like where I work, I can't bring my phone with me. It's a secure facility, so I got to keep my phone in my car, which is like very strange for a lot of people, including myself. And I come out at the end of the day, and I have 137 unread text messages, right?
All the time.
Unrealistic. Can't go through them.
Yep.
Generally, they're you and like one other person. But my point is, one time I saw a little button that said "deliver quietly," which I believe is like a stepped down version of Do Not Disturb. So now that actually the same kind of thing happens to me. I don't get dings when I get text messages anymore.
Nice.
Obviously my phone still rings because you heard that, but sorry, by the way.
Yeah, that was funny. It's the first time that's ever happened.
Right, because my phone's always on silent.
I know.
And Do Not Disturb.
I know.
But anyways, it's very, very, it's an interesting dynamic to like force yourself to not necessarily be available 24/7 in a world where we're technically always available 24/7, or at least we make ourselves that way. So that's really interesting. You're really like intentional about where you put your attention. Saying no is a really difficult thing. A lot of people feel a lot of guilt because when somebody reaches out to you and says, "Hey, what are you doing? I miss you. Let's hang out," and you're already booked out and overbooked, you got to say no, and it sucks, but you got to serve yourself first. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with thinking about what world I want my son to grow up in, and what I want him to know about how the world works. And like you said there, Matt, like there is kind of this global agreement that we're all available 24/7, but like I don't want my son to think that way or live that way. So like when it's just me and him, I want him to know that I'm only available for him. And so I thought a lot about that. I'm a thinker. That's what I do. So I thought a lot about that before he showed up Earthside, and he doesn't know the difference right now, but he will in a few years, and beginning to practice that before he ever showed up has kind of proven it to be possible. Now my wife, she's a midwife. She's an on-call midwife. And so she exists on the opposite end of the spectrum, which is maybe necessitates me of being the way I am, but like her phone is on loud and she's literally on call. And she has to be available for her clients. I kind of center the ship there, I guess, a little bit by being the other end of that spectrum.
Wow. So she's on call literally for other life forms coming into the world.
I can't tell you how amazed I am by her and by the job that they do, the midwives, just healthcare professionals in general, especially this year, working on the front lines and putting yourself at risk for the safety and the health of others. But yeah, I think she's got the coolest job in the world. I think she's a superhero, and to watch her go through that experience herself, she's been to hundreds of births and just been with women for all those moments, and to watch her go through it herself was just, it was a dream come true for the both of us, and we got a kid at the other end of it, so you can't really argue with it.
Yeah, you did.
And then your neighbors put up like a little welcome and everything too. You had such a sweet week that week.
Dude, my neighbors are like just the quintessential, like, kindest grandparents you can imagine. And they don't have grandkids of their own. And so we got home from the hospital, and I was doing dishes, and I looked out the window, and I just see this, you probably saw it on Instagram, this paper that says, "Congratulations, welcome Asher." And I'm just crying doing dishes. And I'm like, "Rebecca, come here." She had a C-section, so she couldn't get up. So I had to take a picture.
Oh no.
Or I think I actually FaceTimed her from the kitchen and showed her. That was pretty sweet. So yeah, we got a good set of neighbors.
That is really sweet. That's awesome, man. And that goes back to that community thing, and it seems like it's, you're kind of manifesting it for yourself, in the coffee world. Like, here we are, we're being communal, we're talking, and then in your neighborly world, and then also you're a pastor, so you're manifesting community for yourself.
I think we probably all do that though. Like,
yeah,
I think if we have a clear set of values, and it doesn't have to be a common set of values like Christian values or whatever, but whatever it is that you value deep inside, I think if you live from that conviction and kind of personify it first, then not only do you attract like-minded people, but also folks who don't have what you have will see it and be like, that's cool. That's a good way to live, or that's a good way to talk, or that seems life-giving to me, and that attracts them as well. And I think I've seen that not just in my own life, but definitely in more ways than one. And the coffee community online is no exception. It's a pretty special thing we have. I say we as like the collective coffee brain. And the connections we've made online over the last couple of years, and specifically this last year, so many people have started brewing coffee at home that weren't brewing coffee at home before. The coffee sphere on Instagram specifically has just ballooned over the last 12 months. And I think it's really, really cool.
And I think I want to say that, a large, I want to say a good portion of that is thanks to great coffee content, approachable coffee content like yours.
Looking at you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Alexander Mills.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Honestly, as far as coffee people go, like, this is as close as I'm gonna get to like meeting a celebrity.
Well, our homeboy Kieran even knew about Alexander Mills.
For sure. Yeah.
And he's a photographer.
You've blown up, and I don't think I've known the Alexander Mills Instagram page without a giant following. What was it like building that following? Was it? I imagine it to be super organic. Did you have did you have a plan, or was there like a way that you envisioned yourself building that community, or did it just kind of happen as you were doing something you love?
I love that question. And people ask me that question a lot when they have the intention to build a community like the one I have. And the answer I give them is not what they're looking for. They don't like it. I did not intentionally build a community that I have the privilege of serving. And that's actually the reason that I don't project myself as a pastor on the internet, is because I know that if I was to build, I pastor a church of 100 people, and that's hard enough. It's really hard to hold 100 people in your heart and serve them all well. And I knew that if I built a community online of people that I don't actually live life with, I know people online, but I don't live life with them. And if it was to grow, I would not be able to serve them the way that they deserve. That's why I don't project myself as a pastor online. So when it came to coffee, my page had a little bit of traction just because of some of my images, like I said, just being a photographer by trade. But when I started talking about coffee and started talking about coffee exclusively and really started writing about coffee, it just happened like a snowball, to be honest with you. And I've done a lot of things to intentionally temper that growth, which is very counter intuitive to a lot of folks. People really want to build big communities because it feels good. And I get that. Yeah. I have felt it. I know what that feels like. I've actively tried to resist that because I want to stay connected to the people who choose to show up for me. I remember when I rolled over 10,000 followers, I got so many messages saying congratulations, and people in my life saying, "Hey, are you gonna post something? Are you gonna thank people?" And I was in like a really frustrated. I was in a really frustrated place during that time because I didn't see 10,000 followers as an achievement. I saw it as a burden. And that's my own fault because I choose to be very available and very accessible online. I've never not responded to a direct message. And that takes a lot of time. On any day, I'm responding to dozens. On some days it's hundreds. And I knew I wanted to be available in that way. So as my account was growing, I was lamenting it because it was getting really hard to stay connected to folks. And so that's why I started this thing called the Coffee Club, which is a blind coffee tasting experience with a very small amount of people. It was very shortly after the pandemic started. I was really missing sitting across the table with somebody and talking about coffee. And my account was also growing really rapidly. And so as my audience got wider, I couldn't go as deep with people anymore. And so I started this thing called the Coffee Club, which is a quarterly, basically blind cupping experience. There's 50 spots available, and even 50 is a lot of people. And it's a 3-month kind of experience where we send out 3 coffees completely blind, no information, and we jump on a call like this. We use Facebook Rooms, and we jump on a call and we cup them live with no preconceived notions about what they are or what they should be. So it's a sensory experience, but it's a community experience. And then there's a private Facebook group where we continue to stay connected over the next 3 months. And that was just born out of my account growing and me not being able to go deep with people anymore.
Yeah.
And so I curated a smaller group of people to be able to go deep with them again.
I never thought of it like that as being a burden, but you're absolutely right. I think the culture is the culture creates like this unknowing, unanalyzed desire for a large community, for a number to go up. It's a metric that, like you said, like it doesn't necessarily mean that you are any better at what you do, or so you could even go as far to say as like you don't even deserve that number, but maybe you take good pictures, and you, Alexander, for sure deserve that reach and more. But I think I see where you're getting at, where if you want to continue to curate an experience for people and make it personal and make it what a community should be, which is genuine human connection, you can't genuinely connect with 14,000 human beings, why I guess you created the Coffee Club to go deeper with people, and you also were building this kind of philosophy for yourself in coffee, which is changing the way that we think about and talk about coffee. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I was really, really interested in how you're kind of taking a little bit of extra effort and time to describe coffee and talk about coffee in the same or similar way that we talk about wine. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I'll try and do it in a concise way because there's a lot there. So when I started started writing a blog and really started helping people through direct messaging on Instagram, I thought I knew. And honestly, when I started creating content specifically for Instagram, which is not how I started, but it just became a thing, I wanted to get really nerdy with coffee, and there was a certain type of coffee drinker that I wanted to not appeal to, but to converse with, to chat, to share common ground with. And I realized very quickly that I could create all the content I wanted, but the questions I was getting most often were very basic, very elementary, rudimentary questions about coffee. And I realized that the people who are actually looking for help are not the people that not the metaphorical person I had constructed in my mind, but they're people that I like to call coffee curious. And I know that a lot of the work you guys do is building this bridge as well. Building a bridge for folks who either drink commodity coffee or don't drink coffee at all, but who want to know more, building that bridge to get them there. So I pivoted my attitude, basically, my own attitude, to serve those kinds of people better. And one of the biggest roadblocks that I was learning most of these types of coffee curious folks were experiencing was just a matter of like language. And this happens for a lot of us in other industries as well. So if you don't know much about wine, but maybe you know that you just like a fruity red wine. If you go to a nice restaurant on Valentine's Day, maybe you want to impress your girlfriend or whatever, you sit down and you open the wine list. And when you open a wine list at a restaurant like that, or maybe it's a restaurant even where like a somm comes to the table side and like is walking you through the wine list, you're going to see names and words, and surely you're going to see prices that you don't know anything about. And I've been in this position where I open it up, I get overwhelmed because I don't understand it. I close it, I put it back down, and I order a soda water or whatever. And so that experience is happening every day for people in coffee who have learned one way or another that there is a specialty or a craft coffee world, but the language is so above their heads and so off-putting in a lot of cases that they get disoriented, they get lost, they quit, they get discouraged. And so a lot of my work now is like reforming that language, reframing it for coffee curious people, but also for people who perpetuate that kind of snobbery, because we don't have to talk that way. And I find that actually in reframing that language, it's really helped a lot of people who are advanced in their coffee journey to think about things a little bit differently. So I stumbled into that, not because I thought it was a good idea, but because it was a problem that I perceived that, I don't know, I thought I could maybe help with.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we keep hearing from a friend of ours is that in coffee, especially in higher end craft coffee, you got to meet people where they're at, right? And so if somebody comes into your shop, we've made a joke about this a few times, but you know, if somebody comes into your shop and sees that you have a really, really expensive,
coffee,
really beautiful, rare coffee, and they want to try it, and then they put milk in it, there's a certain part of your brain that's like, why would you do that? That's, you know, like, because you know you have an appreciation for the entire coffee supply chain and how much work and time and effort went into making that coffee so beautiful, and that in general, when you're putting an additive in a really nice coffee, you are like muffling some of the potential flavors, right? But meeting people where they're at and saying like, hey, that's cool. Hey, can I maybe like put a little bit aside in a tiny cup for you to try first? And then, you know, if you still want milk, you can add milk, or, you know, different ways of thinking about it like that, I think are really important as well. But you're right. Language is so important because coffee started out and still is today for a very large part of the economy, a commodity, which means it is convenient, it's cheap, and it is easy to find, right? Yeah. When you take something like that people take for granted and you say, oh, no, you have to try this, it's much better, and then you start using words and phrases they don't understand, you sound, like you said, Alexander, snobbish, and that's not what we want. That's not how a community grows. And I imagine it's the same for the church, right? Where you need to bring people in and make it feel not only approachable, but something that you can sink your teeth into and don't get overwhelmed by, right?
Absolutely. I was in a coffee shop just the other day, and I was eavesdropping on a conversation between the barista and somebody who was looking to buy a bag of coffee. So there were some really great coffees on the shelves, like really great coffees on the shelves. And this lady walked in, and you could tell that like she just wanted a bag of coffee. So she asked the barista, she's like pointing at some bags. She's like, what's the difference between these? And the barista, I noticed, had a really hard time explaining at her level, in her terms, what could possibly be the difference between those coffees. So he wanted to talk about elevation and fermentation and all this stuff. And I just saw her spirit like bleed out of her ears. And he finished talking and she said, which one's the cheapest? And she went home with that one. And so there was an opportunity there to increase her coffee literacy. And he missed it because he didn't have the tools that he needed, which is just accessible language. And that's probably because he exists in an echo chamber of baristas who talk about coffee a certain way, which is fine when you're talking about coffee, who can talk about coffee that way. But, and that's what I find a little bit going on Instagram too, is like these little pockets of echo chambers where it's like, you can breach this community if you know how to talk this way. And I don't know, I think there's a more holistic vision, or should be, for communities of all shapes and sizes. So that's where the more approachable language, that is still true, language that's still true, describes things as they are, but at least more approachable to help people along to increase their coffee literacy. And an increased literacy turns into a more informed purchaser, which is a whole nother conversation, but you just are a more, you're just more informed. You're a more considerable capitalist, and that's great too.
Conscious consumerism.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game, you know? You said something there. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. So let's imagine in that scenario that you were eavesdropping on, that you were the barista, and that lady came up and said, what's the difference between these coffees? How would you have gone about that?
I would have tried to narrow the field of focus by asking her a question, by saying either learning how she's going to brew it at home, or what kind of coffee she likes, or what she already may know about those coffees. So to basically establish like this base of like, okay, this is where we're starting from. And then I would describe the things that the barista was trying to describe, whether it was flavor profiles or roast profiles or whatever, but using language that is familiar. So if I was trying to describe, I just did it today. I selected 2 really great coffees to brew today. It's a Pacamara variety from Nicaragua, grown at a really great farm, but 2 processes. One was a honey and one was a natural. And I chose those coffees intentionally to increase the coffee literacy of the people I was serving, to teach them about coffee fermentation.
Nice.
But I couldn't say, well, the difference is one's a honey and one's a natural, because to most people I serve today, if not all people I serve today, though that doesn't mean anything. So I had to say, so the difference between these is the way they're processed. Coffee is a fruit just like a cherry. And so the one that says natural on the bag, when the coffee was dried, the whole fruit was left on, and that's going to result in a more fruity cup. The other one that says honey, the skin was taken off, but the mucilage was left on, which kind of looks like honey. That's why we call it that. And so that's going to result in a different type of cup. So I just had to use different language. I'm describing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But I'm speaking in their language, and that just doesn't enable them to make a better purchase, a more informed purchase. But that was a learning opportunity. The people who left me today learned something about coffee processing. And when we have that conversation again, maybe we can use different language, or maybe not, and maybe that's okay too.
Now, I've noticed, man, it's really admirable. You talk about intentionality, you talk about using common language, and these are all pedagogical tools. I mean, these are the tools of a pastor, of a teacher, of an educator, of someone who's constantly reaching out to people. Have you always kind of had a proclivity toward these characteristics that you're finding are useful to you now, or was there something in life that maybe set you along the path of becoming someone who's a very good educator, speaker, teacher, bridge builder when it comes to these things?
I love that question. My dad is a pastor, so I come by it naturally, I guess. He has been pastoring since 2001, so since I was about 10. I'm not sure that he was my main source for that kind of inspiration. I'm sure it was an influence, but I mean, in school, like English was my favorite subject. I don't like math because there is an objective right and wrong. And if you can't find the right, then you're wrong. But with English, you can use words to prove just about anything you want to prove. So yeah, I've always been kind of wired towards language and towards, I guess, teaching a little bit. I'm the kind of person that learns a lot about something that I'm interested in. So I can kind of grasp the thing pretty well And I guess I just have a gift of relaying that information in a way that is digestible. So it's probably a little bit of nature and a little bit of nurture, but I think I come by it honestly.
Nice.
I just this is a break real quick. I just realized that I don't have my computer plugged in, and I don't want the computer to die. So why don't you guys talk about what's in your mug today?
Okay.
Because I know what's in our mug.
Yeah.
And then I'll be right back.
Oh, that's great.
Perfect. 1 minute.
You're going to grab the plug?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right.
Yeah, dude, what's in your mug today? What coffee are you drinking at home today?
So it's gone. Now I'm looking at an empty mug and I'm wishing that it wasn't empty, which I guess is my own fault because I brew small doses.
Wait, did you AeroPress it?
No, I used an origami dripper, the medium size, but the Kalita 185 filter. So it's a 13 gram dose. But this is a coffee from Luminous, a roaster in Las Vegas.
Mason and Lexus.
That's right. Just exceptional people who, I don't know, run a company. If I was going to run a company on their scale, I would want to run it like they do. They don't give too many shits about a lot of the things that people care about. And they're really pushing boundaries, which I really respect. And I think that's kind of embodied in this coffee a bit. It's a coffee from Sumatra. Which a lot of us associate with another S word, Starbucks. Yep. And this coffee is nothing like the Sumatra you've had from Starbucks. It is super complex. It has like a green apple acidity, like it sparkles like that. It's got a big full body. And I find when I push it to 1:17 ratio, it really opens up a lot. So that's what I'm drinking. Sumatra from Luminous.
At 1:17 with a 13 gram starting point?
Yeah, 13 gram dose, 1:17 ratio, which ends up being, like 221 grams.
Yeah, I started jumping on the 12 gram like half dose train.
You're on that train too?
I am.
You would be.
Yeah, because
you're a homebrew daddy. That's what's up.
I've got a. I don't know how I feel about that name, but I've got a Stag X that like the regular size Stag X is the perfect size for like 12 grams
it sure
to 200.
Is.
Oh yeah.
And that really brings out for me like citrus notes. I don't know if it's the shape of the brewer or the dose or whatever, but I usually get a lot brighter coffees, or I should say my cups are brighter doing that dose. And I enjoy it.
But I noticed that you made enough on the Chemex for the both of us.
That's right,
today.
because you gotta serve when you have guests over.
It's very charitable of you.
Matt, what are we drinking?
Yeah, we're drinking we're drinking a coffee from Colombia. It's a double fermented natural give me a second. It is a Caturra coffee.
Yeah.
It's a Caturra from El Vergel Estates in Colombia. This was a highlight roast that we did.
This is guava banana.
Guava banana. Yeah. And it's crazy. It's kind of boozy. It's obviously super fruit forward, right?
Yep.
I have been getting a lot of like melon and I guess you could say guava. Like you said before, Alexander, like I've never eaten a guava fruit, so I can't say guava, but it's like this like tropical fruit punch kind of vibe. I gotta go buy a guava so I know what the heck that tastes like.
I have some in the fridge if you want to stop by or
I would take a trip
Go
up.
to Niagara Falls.
We're not that far from there.
you're
We're
not
like
far.
3 hours.
Hey, can we
3
talk?
hours from Niagara Falls?
Probably.
Can we talk about?
Oh no, Niagara Falls. Go
Where,
ahead.
sorry, where exactly are you?
So we're in. Do you know Albany, the capital of New York?
Yeah.
We're about 40 minutes north of that.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So I was wrong. We're 3 hours to the Canadian border, but that's Montreal. We got to go west towards Buffalo, then to Niagara. Yeah. Don't mind me.
That's a 7-hour drive to Niagara Falls just to get there, and then we still got to cross the border. And,
which you're definitely not doing right now.
Sure.
We can't do it.
Oh yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah. God bless America.
God bless America.
Okay, I wanted to. I'm a bad podcast guest because I'm turning the conversation back on you, and without a question, I'm basically just going to talk for a second. By the way, Albany is 4.5 hours from here, so.
Whoa.
Yeah.
There must be a highway that cuts. There must be a highway that cuts through, so you don't have to take.
Oh no! You know what? You go into Canada first and then cut across Canada.
No, it's the 90. It goes right through Utica, Syracuse, Rochester, and then right into Buffalo.
I don't know how that's only 4.5 hours because it used to take me like 4 just to get to Brockport.
Yeah, in Rochester. He's right over the border. Anyways, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, since we were talking about your coffee and what you're drinking, and I know you have guava banana in stock right now, but you guys sent me a bag of the All Day ADK.
Oh, yeah, you got it.
Yeah, which is a coffee that I really appreciated because it does the thing that I'm trying to do as well, which is build a bridge between a certain type of person and a certain type of experience. So it's exactly what you say it is. It's a blend of 2 really interesting coffees, one from Zambia and one from Ethiopia, but also roasted in a way that is familiar to people who drink a certain type of coffee, but doesn't do the coffees that you've obviously thoughtfully selected. It doesn't do them a disservice. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
So I just wanted to commend you on kind of curating that coffee and roasting it as well. I forget who's the name? Knockabout Roasters did that one for you, right?
Knockabout,
Yes.
Yeah. Our friend Nick Fernia, he's 21 years old. He came right out of high school, and instead of going to college, started a business. Nomad Coffee and Crepes, which is a little, I would say probably 400, 500 square foot cafe.
Imagine if
bar.
you would the best specialty coffee dive bar.
Yeah.
That could exist.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's the man, and he's been teaching us how to roast, which has been amazing. We just actually bought our own roaster, a little 500 gram Mill City, which is pretty exciting.
That's
it's in my garage
interesting.
right now.
Well, we're seeking to educate ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And every now and then what'll happen is one of these opportunities will come along the way, and like Matt will just be like, we got to do it. And I'm an enthusiast. Have you ever done like the 9 personality types or whatever? Have you ever done that test?
I'm most familiar with the Enneagram.
Okay. So there's that, and then there's like the 9 personality types, and there's like, the facilitator, the leader, the enthusiast and stuff. I'm definitely an enthusiast. So Matt will be like, we got to do this because we're going to increase our education. I go, absolutely. We're in. 100%.
Yeah.
And like, so like, we ended up just one day, I remember I woke up and there were like a string of texts already. We had been like going back and forth, and I think we had pretty much silently decided upon it. But I woke up and Matt was already texting with the guy we were buying it from, Ron Greco, a good friend of ours. And I just watched the conversation unfold. I didn't even say anything to Matt. I was like, should I text him and say something? And I was like, nah, he's got it. Like,
I got it.
This is great.
He already knows you're going to say yes anyway. So
So like, I was like, whatever.
We're always, Kevin and I always seem to be, for the most part, on the same page, which is
we were
amazing.
today. I called you up and said, hey, could I show up a little early? And you called me back and you were like, hey, I didn't listen to your voicemail. Could you show up a little early?
Yeah.
That's your fault for leaving a voicemail. You should have just texted him, but.
Totally. You're not a big texter.
All the time.
You're not a texter, like one-on-one to me. Like, we're in a lot of group chats together, but if I text you directly, you'll just give it like a thumbs up or a heart.
Oh, nice.
I do that in a lot of personal texts. Here's the thing, and going back to what you guys were talking about earlier, I have currently, and this really, what you were talking, Alexander, what you were saying about intentionality is really resonating with me, because that's something that I am reshaping what intentionality means to me.
Cool.
On a very personal level right now. And that's like one of the biggest reasons that I still have no personal social media currently. And then I also have been like, I have the read receipts so people can see when I've read messages, but I'm not responding to people immediately unless it's an emergency.
Isn't that the best feeling? Letting somebody know that you've read it and just letting them sit in that while they just wait for you to respond.
It's kind of a power move.
Not out of spite either.
Yeah,
it's literally, I'm actually thinking about my words.
Yeah.
And I've noticed some people can't handle it.
No.
And they're so used to having like this, and I was too for a very long time. I was very used to like that instant gratification. We're doing things and we're showing everybody everything that we're doing all the time. And like I can appreciate that, but at the same time, like that's not where I want to be moving forward. So like I'm in a space right now where I know when I get back onto social media in whatever platform, in whatever form that is, like when I'm re-engaging with it, I'm going to be starting at a very base level with a lot of intention. And like, a lot of thought behind it and what it means to me, because I don't want to just be like throwing up the things that I'm doing for the sake of throwing up the things I'm doing. And I also don't want to be throwing in pieces into conversations that are unnecessary, or like, just throwing my 2 cents in to throw it in, which is something that can become a habit if you train yourself to do it. So I'm kind of training my brain right now to behave in this other realm. And I woke up today super intentional. Woke up, got my workout in, got some really good food, was hydrated, and then started calling people, started texting people after that, and it felt really good.
I have been practicing that practice, for lack of a better word, at the risk of being redundant, in my face-to-face conversations as well, because I have noticed, and I'm sure you guys can see this in your own lives too, the way that our instant texting has kind of distorted the way that we're able to communicate face-to-face. Especially in conflict, I've noticed the way that we engage in conflict over text is so I think unnatural. So in my personal conversations, what I noticed is that when someone was speaking to me, I would already be thinking about what I was going to say.
Yes.
And then, and so what that does is that, first of all, that just means I'm not actually listening to what you're saying. But I'm already thinking about what I'm going to say. And I think, I can't prove this, of course, but I think it had to do, in my own life, it was just because of how instant a lot of our other communication is. It was that habit was bleeding into personal conversations. So in my own consciousness, I've had to resist that. And what it actually looks like lately, guys, is intentionally, when you're speaking to me choosing to only listen to you and not think about what I'm going to say next. And what that looks like is when you're done talking, and I would normally jump in and respond right away, sometimes I need like 5, 10, 15 seconds to actually think about what I'm going to say before I say it. And that can be like a little bit awkward, but it's like, I don't know, it's just more thoughtful, to use that word, like you were saying, Kevin, like just more intentional and being much more choice with my words. And what it has given me is a much more rich conversational experience, and that just translates into like deeper relationships, I think, because people know when I'm talking to them that they're being heard. And not too many people articulate that to me. I mean, Rebecca does, because we're married and we talk like that all the time. But people will know when you're listening to them or if you're just hearing them. And I think that comes a lot from how we talk online. So I try to push back against that stuff in my real face-to-face life as much as I can. And probably sometimes too, I err on the extreme side, but I'm trying it and it seems to be working. So
dude, that's great.
Do you ever see kind of the other end of that spectrum, where if you're being intentional in a face-to-face conversation and maybe you're like I am right now, pausing, thinking, choosing your words carefully, at least for me, I sometimes take my time to a fault to get a thought out, because I'm trying actively not to and and just say stuff to fill the time, but instead say things that matter.
Sure.
Do you ever find that people, because of social media, I would say, or because of the world that we live in with just constant influx of information, that people are easily distracted and don't have a hard time keeping up with what you're saying, and instead stop listening, it feels like?
Yeah, I've experienced that a couple times. And people probably, maybe they say stuff about me behind my back when we're done actually having a conversation, be like, were you listening to that guy? Like, why was he taking so long to respond to you? But like, is he okay? Is he awake?
Yeah.
I've noticed that a couple times where people's attention drifts. But I think at the end of the conversation, maybe in their own self-reflection, they could probably recognize that they had my full attention the whole time. And it, over time, as I've kind of practiced this over time, I think people know me as somebody who doesn't use too many empty words. So when I say something that carries weight, they know that I've really considered it. And whether that's a good or a bad thing. Like what I mean is whether the thing that I'm saying carries like a heavy, like negative weight, or if it's like a a very positive thing. People know that I didn't say that without basically deep consideration first, and therefore it just ends up being a lot more meaningful. So,
of course,
I don't know. I think it's working. Of course, I think it's working because I'm the one who's doing it. But
yeah,
it's been working great in this conversation, so I appreciate it.
It actually, no, I have noticed that though. It's been really nice talking to someone who is putting more thought and meaning into their language.
Absolutely,
and that's something that I think it's going to. It's of an intrinsic and like irrefutable value.
Totally.
To do that. It's something intangible too. It's of a value that cannot be recreated anywhere else, Well,
and nowadays our attention is so portioned off in so many different ways, in so many areas of our life, that I think it's a really valuable thing to know that I have your attention, you have mine, and this is the moment we're sharing here, and this is it. Like this is all that's going on. It's like, to me, it feels like a breath of fresh air, because when we're done here, I'm gonna walk out that door, and there's gonna be a baby that needs me. I got to make dinner. There's the DMs have piled up since we got on here. I've got texts. I've got texts that are waiting on me. I have been off work for a month, so I literally have 4 weeks of emails. Like there's always something, right? But for now, it's just us, and it's good.
Yeah, that is nice.
Wow. Off work for 4 months.
4
That's
weeks. Great. No, did I say 4 months?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, you mean 4 weeks?
No, 4 weeks. It's been a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. Kevin and I were making jokes about our healthcare system is so funny. Like the idea. We only just got like paid family leaves in New York, which essentially is, leave for when you have a kid. But for a long time, it was only maternity leave for women, and it was sort of assumed up until the last maybe decade or so that the dad would save up PTO, right? Personal time off, vacation time off,
PTO, baby.
Maybe some medical time off if they're like divvied up, and you would just like take time wherever you could to be home with the kid, but you were working, and it's so dumb.
And how long is family leave?
So
I don't think it's that long.
Well, in New York State, so this is a state law, it's not federal. We have been paying into federally, from a statewide tax, a paid family leave, which pays you, I think, up to 80 or 90% of your salary for up to 6 weeks, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, which is great. That
good.
is progressive, but we're also living in New York. It's not guaranteed nationwide.
So our system works the same way. It's a federal tax that you pay into, and Rebecca, and this is standard across, I believe this is federal. Rebecca gets 12 months off.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah.
The first year.
Yeah.
That's so awesome, because
it's awesome for everyone.
We know as modern human beings how crucial that development time is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How dense that connection can, that time that you're developing the connection with your direct, your mother and father as a child is so necessary. All of the positive words, essential, amazing, you know, and so that's great to hear that she gets 12 months to just dedicate to Asher.
Yeah, it's and that's the world I grew up in. So I just thought that's how the world worked. And then of course I went and I married an American, and I learned that that's not how the world works.
I was going to make a joke
how's universal healthcare?
Yeah, man.
It's really great.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. And Rebecca, you and Rebecca were long distance for, like you said, 3 or 4 years until you got married.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. If I was Rebecca, I would have jumped ship a long time ago. Especially
Matt's still trying to find.
Especially with the age of Trump, we all made jokes when Trump got elected that we were all going to move to Canada.
I know.
That sounded like a great idea. I don't know why.
Well, now the border's closed, so good luck.
Yeah, you missed your opportunity.
Final question, man. Real fun one, but also the most important question of every podcast. What's your jam? Is there a song or an artist or?
Yeah, I've got a few. I thought about this question. So lots of great music that has come out in the last couple of weeks, actually. So I'm unashamed to tell you that I have like really been listening to Justin Bieber's new record.
Let's go. It's so
good.
And like the deluxe version that just dropped last week, I think. So Tori Kelly, she's one of my favorite like vocal artists. She's got, they added a track with her on the end of the deluxe version. So I'm really loving that record. For my kind of alternative or like rock people, Manchester Orchestra is dropping a new record. And the first two singles are really, really great. Bedhead is outstanding, and the music video was just crazy good. And then for my like hip hop or like MC loving people, favorite artist of mine long before he did a collab with Onyx Coffee Lab is Propaganda. He was a basically a spoken word guy. He was doing like slam poetry, and he's got just like some really rich history in LA, and has that like LA born and raised kind of vibe to him. And he just dropped, I guess it's an EP. It's called Terraform, which is what his Coffee with Onyx is called.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah. So he dropped that yesterday on New Music Friday. And I was listening to it like probably too loud today in the car. You know, when it's like, it's too loud because it kind of like there are some frequencies that are hurting, some speakers are crackling, but it's like, it's good. Like I know that this is the right thing to do right now.
If you were in an old Honda Civic, the doors would have been like, rumbling a little bit.
Yeah. So I don't know. Those have been my jams lately, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, but mostly just sports talk. So that's boring.
Oh, well, past the brew and stuff, right?
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Shout out Mark Cunningham.
Yeah, I was on that podcast a while ago. I mean, COVID has just warped time for all of us. So I can't tell you if that was in the last month or the last year, but it was sometime. Me and Mark had a great chat. He's a really, really good guy, fellow Canadian, of course, as you know.
Yep.
And his podcast is good. So shout out to Pass the Brew.
Yeah, I wanted to give him a shout out. I didn't know where to fit in a joke about it, but we have some fresh maple syrup here.
Oh, did he send it to
maple
you?
Season. No,
that's the joke. He has maple syrup. That's the joke. That's it.
Because Mark was like, he posted a bunch of stuff about having maple syrup and stuff, and I was like, all right, we can do that too down here in New York. Like,
you're still in the zone, like you know, like the mountains and the trees and whatnot. Like I'm sure you have maple trees where you are. So.
We're progressive enough that to some people south of us, we've been referred to as New Jersey's Canada.
You know what? That's not bad. If I were you, I would take that and I would run with it.
I mean, that's a compliment.
I take that. I 100% take that. And we just legalized cannabis.
Let's go.
Yeah, we're making strides here in New York. Man.
Well, Governor Cuomo needed a win. That's really what it came down to.
Did he ever? He was in a tough spot. So he says, I'm just going to legalize weed and make the general population happier than they've ever been.
He said, everybody chill out.
Yeah, that poor guy.
Before we move on to our jams, I do want to geek out really quick with you, Alexander, because I've seen, and this might have been before you moved. I don't know what your new setup looks like, but you've got a really sick vinyl setup.
Yeah,
that I aspire to. For Christmas, my parents were really, really wonderful and got me like a phenomenal, just beautiful record player. By Audio-Technica, the whole. It's got like the weighted arm. It doesn't matter. It's so nice, and
so
I'm still working on my setup. What does that setup look like for you right now? And like, is it separate from your like living area, or is it in your living area? What's it like?
So it's right in my living area. So we have this like big, kind of mid-century modern TV stand. So the TV's on top. And then below on the shelf I've got a Denon receiver, and then the turntable's right next to the receiver. And then I've got two big tower speakers off to the side, and a 12-inch sub off to the right. It's a 5.1 system, but I don't have the rear speakers hooked up right now. I'm not sure I'm going to. The towers sound really, really good the way they are. I have used that Audio-Technica turntable, and I like it a lot. I do have kind of a bent towards vintage gear. For sure. So I have this old, like refurbished Sony turntable that treats me really well. Now I know that I come by this from my father. My dad's got a problem. Like his collection, he's probably over 2,000 vinyls right now.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I don't have 2,000 records, and mostly because I haven't accrued them over the course of the last 40 years like my dad has. But every time I'm in the city or my dad drops off a record every once in a while, I try to buy one or two. So I was in the city a couple days ago and I picked up Kanye West, Jesus is King.
Nice.
And I bought that because I've been kind of eyeing it. I liked that album. But it won kind of ironically. I guess it's not ironic. It's just true. But it won the Grammy for Best Contemporary Christian Album this year, which feels like a joke to me.
A little bit.
Yeah. So when I was in the shop, I saw it and I was like, you know what? It won the Grammy. I got to buy it. So I bought that. And I bought Al Green's first album for Rebecca. She's a big Al Green fan. So it's called Green is Blues. And that's what I came home with this week. So yeah, that's my setup. And we spin vinyl like in the evenings when there isn't a hockey game on, but we want to be like kind of just lounging in the living room. I'll make a coffee or like pour a drink and we'll just sit down and listen to some vinyl. And I don't know. I've always been the kind of, I don't listen to playlists and I have friends who only listen to playlists, which is fine. But the way I consume music and the way I consume art is full album front to back.
Yes.
And I get that from my dad. So vinyl really obviously suits that kind of listening habit. That's how I'm going to listen to that artist anyways. So I just love, and if I put on Bon Iver, and this is, I don't know why I'm telling you this, because people are going to listen to this. Like people are going to know this about me. So far, I think it's only my wife and my dad that know this about me. But if I'm like in the zone, if I put on Bon Iver, any of his records really, but especially the most recent, I will lay like on the ground on my stomach and just lay on the floor. Like no, I won't have my watch on, no phone, nothing. I'll just lay on the floor, look like I'm asleep, and listen to the record that way, because you can kind of feel it in the floor. But it's like, I don't know what it is. I don't. I'm regretting saying all these words out loud.
Please don't. No,
I love this.
First of all, you've piqued my interest because I'm a Bon Iver, like I'm just a sucker for all things Bon Iver.
Yeah.
Just inverted.
One of my first vinyl experiences was in college. I had a little apartment with our friend Chris.
Yep.
Who that was Chris calling me, by the way. His mom is in the hospital and she's okay and she's leaving the hospital. So shout out to Chris Kerr. Yeah.
Good
shout
news.
out.
Shout out to Chris Kerr and Joan
Props
Walter's
and prayers.
mom. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But anyways, we had this apartment together. I had this, this funny one of those Crosley like multi-device record players, right? It was like a wooden box and you put a CD in it and all that stuff. And I got the self-titled record by Bon Iver and spun that thing so much that year. That was 2013 to 2014, just nonstop. And we went to school in Oswego, which is like, it's right on Lake Ontario, right? And the winters were really heavy, so you had like a lot of snow. Like that is the record for deep winter, man.
Oh, dude! When track 3 comes on, when Holocene starts playing, it's like everyone stop everything. I'm sad right now.
Yeah,
I just need to listen. Like Justin just needs to sing me to sleep. Yeah,
I don't care how happy I am as a human being when Holocene comes on. I'm sad.
Yeah.
But it's the good sad. It's the
It's the kind that hurts. It hurts so good.
Yes. All right. Good.
Quick comment before Matt, your gems.
Please.
I want to throw down because you brought up Onyx Coffee and propaganda. Onyx Coffee. First, they did the 1619 with Coffee Black, right?
Yeah.
Then they
Bartholomew,
had
my guy. Shout out to Bartholomew Jones, my guy.
Right?
Oh.
Shout out to Bart. And then they did with propaganda the
Terraform.
But then they just did Who Shot Ya with Everybody's Busy.
Yeah.
And I love the triumvirate that has happened there.
That's really so
when
good.
they first did 1619 with Bartholomew Jones, I was like, this is awesome. I hope they do more. And then they did Terraform, and I was like, this is really cool. I wonder where this is. And then Who Shot You from Everybody's Busy? I was like, whoa, all right, that's cool, because Everybody's Busy, I don't think a lot of people, they have a really great following in their community, but I don't think a lot of people in the coffee industry.
Yeah, they're kind of niche.
And now they're probably there's eyes that are being directed toward them that never would have before, and I love them.
I felt the same way with Coffee Black and Bartholomew Jones when he got his moment with Onyx. It was like they took their ginormous spotlight that they have and they shone it on him. And I was just texting with the other day. It's like it changed his life, and not just for him. His life is devoted to the work of the people where he lives. Yeah. And I have to like give some credit to Onyx for who they are and what they do. So many great people there, like Alika and Lance, and everyone's so great there, but I don't know how they do it. A company, the scope that they are, that they can continue doing really important things. Yeah, that seems really uncommon. That when companies grow to a certain scale, they, for whatever reason, stop doing meaningful work. In my opinion, it's usually these smaller grassroots company that really affect change, but Onyx seems to be doubling down and like winning awards for their packaging, which is dope and good for them, but also doing really important work and highlighting people who are also doing important work. And I just don't know how it gets better than that. So one more thing before you guys tell me what's your jam. Just because we're talking Justin Vernon, if you haven't listened to Big Red Machine, it's his project with Aaron Dessner from The National.
Oh, what?
No, I had never known that at all.
I'm so glad that you didn't know this. So there's a record that they dropped in 2018 called I Won't Run From It. I have that on vinyl as well. It's another album that I will lay on the floor and listen to. There's only like 3 albums that I will do that with. That is one of them. So check that out for you guys, because I know you'll appreciate it, but also the people listening. The band is called Big Red Machine. It's a project between Justin Vernon and Aaron Dessner from The National, and the record's called I Won't Run From It.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Now, I love what they were able to do on Folklore with.
Oh my gosh! Like, don't even get me started with Taylor Swift.
It's the only
good. It's so good.
It's such a come up. Like, not that Taylor Swift is really coming up because she has been a massive, massive star for as long as we can remember now, but she went into that pop era and she
embraced it.
And she embraced it. Yeah. She did 1989, which I thought was really great. And then I think a couple of records after that, they didn't land with me. They seemed too poppy. She did that collaboration with Brandon Urie.
That was pretty good.
I didn't like it. It felt like it felt too easy. There wasn't a whole lot of anyway, personal opinion, maybe a hot take. But then now that she's leaning back into her roots, which is like acoustic music, but it's more folky rather than country. It's phenomenal. Folklore.
As far as I'm concerned, she's proving herself to be one of the most pliable songwriters and artists, at least of my generation. I don't know another artist who has put their finger on as many genres as she has and says, I will be number one here, I will be number one here, I will be number one here, I can do this too. Like when she came out with these records, and she can write a song, but to execute folk music the way she did, or like that indie vibe, and not not have it feel country at all, it's like, how does she have this within her? She's a superstar. Those 2 records were both exceptional. Boys, what is your jam?
Okay.
Yes.
Hit it, Matt. What do you got?
Sorry, goddamn. Another one. John Mayer. He's also touched a lot of genre buttons.
That's
very, very
true.
well.
And he's also dominating. I don't know how active you guys are on TikTok, but he's dominating TikTok right now.
No, I'm not on TikTok, but I heard that he's all over because he's not on Instagram right now.
He's so good.
He's just crushing.
He's hilarious. I might download TikTok just for John Mayer.
John Mayer.
All right.
Yeah.
What's your jam?
So I've got a couple. Since we were talking about vinyl, I have this one thing in my head that I've probably already told you this story, Kevin, but one of my favorite vinyl experiences was I went on a little road trip with our friend Devin Seegers. This was many years ago, and we were going to pick up a guitar that he bought online from a guy. We pick it up, and we're driving through this college town. I can't remember which one, and we're in central New York, and we stop in this town. We're like, oh, look, there's a record store. So we walk in there and we're checking out, we're flipping through the vinyl or whatever. And there's a song playing on the overhead. And I turned to the guy who was running the shop, and I assume he owned the place. And I said, hey, who is this? Who's playing right now? And the guy was like, oh, that's David Brubeck. It's the David Brubeck Quartet. And I was like, do you have this on vinyl, like right now? And he's like, yeah, I sure do. Here, it's over here. And sure enough, it was this record called Jazz Impressions of Japan by the David Brubeck Quartet. Like classic jazz, but just really great. So Jazz Impressions of Japan, he does like these different symbolic records where he is like taking a moment in time or a place and he is creating it with jazz. So in this one, it was Japan, and it was like very busy, and a lot of time changes and a lot of different different instruments, solos. It's one of my favorite records, and I own it upstairs and I spin it all the time. And
that's awesome.
so that's
so good.
That's number one.
Okay.
Number two is it's spring. It's sometimes cold, sometimes warm, and I've got a soft spot for I'm sorry, I'm blanking on him. Hold on. Bear with me 1 second. Here we go.
The lyrics to the song?
No, I wish.
Oh.
Okay, good. The Japanese House.
Oh, yeah.
Good at
the Japanese House.
Dude. Okay.
Phenomenal. So good.
So good. They did an EP that I also have to look up now.
Saw You in a Dream?
No, Chewing Cotton Wool.
Oh, yes.
And
Recently.
of course, full circle, because the third track has a feature with Justin Vernon.
Oh.
And I was in the mountains in Banff in the fall. And it was the same weather that you were just describing, where it's like there's a chill in the air. We got the first snow out there, and I was doing some work. I was doing aerial photography, which is a part of my life that we didn't even touch on.
Wow.
Next
a licensed unmanned aircraft pilot. But we were out there filming the mountains, and that record, it's only 4 songs. And the first one's like a minute and a half. It's basically an intro on repeat, just because it was like, when you're in a place or in a moment in time, it's like, this is the vibe right now. Like, this is how I'm feeling. Yeah. That was that record. So the Japanese House, so good.
Wow.
Awesome. Love
it. You got third? Were you about to hit me with a third? I didn't know if you had more.
No, I'm pointing at you because I'm like, Kevin, you probably got some abstract bullshit, and I can't wait to dig into it.
I got some great abstract bullshit for you.
Tell me.
All right, straight up, for everybody here right now, because I'm sure all of us can get down with a little bit of lo-fi beats in our life.
Oh, yeah.
In a masterful display of marketing, technique, and songwriting, Jazzinuf, Jazzinuf, has released a new single titled Arabica.
Stop.
I'm not making this up. It just came out this week. It's called Arabica. And the song starts and you're like, oh, cool, some lo-fis. And then the sample right before the song kicks in is a cup of coffee being poured up, like a mug. You can hear it being filled, and then it's like just cool lo-fi jazz, but it's got really good songwriting, and it's not too long. So I love that.
So I should admit that when it comes to lo-fi, I don't know much. I know that when I make a video of me brewing coffee, I go to Soundstripe and I choose the filters, hip hop, lo-fi, and I choose whatever song that is. So that's how I consume lo-fi, is backing tracks for YouTube videos or whatever.
There's a lot of... Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know much about the genre or the culture. Clearly, people like Jazzinuf because he's got a bunch of followers.
Oh, yeah. Huge.
And I see his most recent post on Instagram is a post about Arabica with one of those, surely they've got a name, but one of those original like coffee, it looks like a teapot and a kettle, like the traditional way to brew coffee in Ethiopia. That's the album artwork. So I'm going to learn about lo-fi by the time we're done off this podcast.
All right.
Yeah, Kevin knows I'm the lo-fi nerd of the two of us. You actually, as a gift, Kevin bought me a vinyl of lo-fi, which is kind of like a blending of the two worlds.
Yes.
You'll find that
lo-fi. Yeah.
I got hi-fi lo-fi, I guess. Though. But much how, like you said, Alexander, that you consume most music in album form, which I agree, I do the same. You'll find that lo-fi you will consume in playlist form because it's like a nice medley of really great lo-fi beats
Unless you get into the artists, and then you know people like Linda Cease and Pandrez, and like once you start getting into them, they actually have concepts to the album.
They do.
And then not lo-fi exactly, but let me add onto this a really great guitar-driven kind of lo-fi album. Kind of ventures into R&B and hip hop a little bit, but even has like a little bit of saxophone and jazz. Is Izanagi, which is spelled IZV NVGI. Izanagi has a really great new EP out called the Scarlet EP.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I don't think I even had another. I just thought that those were like super great to bring
those
in.
are great.
I mean, other than that, I've been jamming metal. So
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Yeah, I'm not going to throw more metal.
Give
at
me
everybody in the world.
throw one metal.
Oh
jam
no. Here's my other jam, because it's a jam that's going to challenge me.
Okay.
The new season of Dissect is on Yeezus, and I listened to the first episode, and Yeezus is my least favorite Kanye album, and already I'm like, okay, I can hear where I might appreciate this album that much more by the end of this experience. Yeah, Dissect. Have you ever listened to Dissect, Alexander?
No.
Oh, you would love
100%. If you like deep diving into music and like really getting to know an artist and albums that they do, Cole Kushner for the past like 4 years has been like dissecting albums, and it's perfect for people who listen to albums in or listen to music in album form. I'm in that category too. Like, I have a hard time changing off an album once I've turned it on and started from like, if I'm on track 4 and there's 10, I gotta get to 10. Like, I can't. But he does such a great job breaking down every little thing that I've learned so much about music from listening to it. I've learned about music theory. I've learned about like what people put into their lyrics and how much it means to have meaningful lyrics.
And I believe each season is its own album.
Each season's an album, and then every episode, like they do an intro episode typically, they'll do 1 or 2 intro episodes, and then they do song by song. And they just break down.
Super cool.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It sounds like you ever listen to the Song Exploder podcast?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's just like that.
Yeah.
And then they have you watched it on Netflix too?
No.
Yeah, they have show, dude.
They have like a visual version now, which is just as cool. But I love the Song Exploder podcast because I'm a musician as well, so I love, kind of getting like the behind the scenes, sometimes a view of some of these artistic works and sometimes hearing from the artists themselves, because obviously all art is just to be interpreted by the beholder. But when you make, like, especially somebody like Justin Vernon who makes abstract art, basically, like he had an idea, and like that song means something to him, and sometimes like without hearing it from his mouth, you may never catch that. He was, I think they did, if I'm remembering correctly, they did an episode of Song Exploder with him, and it was like, oh right, I want one of these for every track he's ever written because he's such a lunatic.
Yeah, what do I have to pay for that? I want the whole discography like broken dissected down. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
All right, Alexander, we have taken up, I think, enough of your time. You've probably got an entire folder of DMs to go through, and you've got a child. We appreciate you taking the time and spending it with us and chatting with us about coffee. Any final thoughts? Where can people find you if they live under a rock and they don't already know you?
You can find me on the internet, as you said earlier, Matt.
Internet.
So my actual website, where my actual blog lives, is alexandermills.coffee, which is not too hard to remember. And then on Instagram, which is, some more lighthearted, more digestible content, is alexander.mills. Obviously, I'm on TikTok because that's where all the kids are nowadays.
The kids.
I'm on YouTube too. I'm taking a break from YouTube because it's just too much work. But yeah, I'm around, and my final thoughts are just a thought of appreciation to both of you for a couple things. One, for the coffee you sent me. That was very charitable, and I really enjoyed it. And I think that coffee's special. Like I said earlier, I think it's really good for what it is, which is that bridge builder. But no, for the work that you're doing and the reason you're doing it, and for the podcast, and then of course for having me on and giving me an opportunity just to blab for a little while. I think we've touched on it in so many different ways that I really am convinced that language and words and mostly just conversation is so deeply meaningful for how we see each other, how we see the world, and of course how we see coffee. So thank you so much for having me, and you guys are the best. And maybe we'll do this one time and not press record and just chat, because I've had such a great time. And hopefully sometime, since we learned 4.5 hours away, maybe we'll do it in person sometime.
Heck yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, man, we would love that. Anytime. You're always welcome. We've got some cool coffee in our area, though it's growing. It's a little baby form.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were really stoked to have you. And final thought from me, we operate this podcast and our organization on gratitude. That is the genesis of what this is just being grateful for what already exists in the world in coffee. And we're grateful for you, and we're grateful that you are a part of it. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.